As the Taveri delegation departed with their victory, Alina's aide, Commander Raj Sharma, fell into step beside her through the gleaming corridors of the conclave station. "They believe they've outmaneuvered us again," Raj whispered, his formal diplomatic uniform hiding cutting-edge defensive systems that could shield them both from any assassination attempt. The Taveri ambassador actually winked at his subordinates. Alina maintained her pleasant expression as they passed a group of Murloxian diplomats, their tentacled appendages gesturing excitedly in conversation. Good. The more confident they feel, the less they'll look beyond the surface. She paused at a viewport, gazing out at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Conclave, a structure humans had supposedly needed assistance to help design. Admiral Chen reports that the Jupiter fleet has successfully tested the new temporal shielding, Raj continued once they were alone. One cruiser completely disappeared from sensors for 3 minutes. Not even the Aldebarans could detect it, and they pride themselves on having the most advanced scanning technology in the quadrant. Alina nodded slightly. "Have him scale it back. Next demonstration should show only a 40% effectiveness rate. We need the Aldebarans to believe their systems can still partially track our vessels." The quantum communicator embedded near Alina's brainstem tingled with an incoming transmission from Earth Central Command. Unlike the crude communication devices other species used, which required obvious movement to activate, Alina simply blinked 3 times in a specific pattern. "The mining operation will commence as scheduled," came the voice of Director Kwan directly into her auditory cortex. "The Taveri will be given access to our struggling facilities in the Australian outback. Make sure they bring their own extraction equipment. We need detailed scans of their technology." "Understood," Alina subvocalized, the nanites in her larynx transmitting her response without producing audible sound. "What about the materials they're expecting to find?" "We've seeded the area with trace amounts of rhodium and palladium," Director Kwan replied. "Enough to satisfy them, but not enough to make them suspicious of our motives. The real deposits remain undisturbed 3 kilometers below." Alina and Raj boarded their shuttle, deliberately designed to look slightly outdated compared to other diplomatic vessels. As the airlock sealed behind them, they finally dropped the pretense, standing straighter, their expressions shifting from diplomatic deference to focused intensity. "They have no idea what's coming," Raj said, removing the uncomfortable ceremonial collar that all human diplomats wore, a symbol of submission that concealed advanced biometric monitors. Alina activated the shuttle's true systems, hidden beneath panels of apparently primitive controls. The vessel's quantum core hummed to life, generating a field that would make their departure appear sluggish and conventional, while actually folding space around them for instantaneous transit. "They never do," Alina replied, accessing the complete data archive of the meeting, including the private conversations the Taveri had among themselves when they thought no one was listening. "That's the advantage of being underestimated. They see what they expect to see. A young species stumbling into galactic politics, grateful for any scraps thrown our way." As the shuttle broke away from the station, a message arrived from Admiral Chen. "Operation Humble Facade proceeds as planned. Jupiter fleet returning to phantom dimensional space. Send the word. All human operatives throughout the conclave are to maintain protocol understated until further notice." Alina smiled. The game continued, and humanity was playing the longest con in galactic history. The Silurian interrogation chamber smelled of ozone and fear. Dr. Marcus Wong slumped against the restraints that held him to the cold metal chair, his lab coat torn and stained with artificial blood. His apparent exhaustion wasn't entirely an act. Maintaining the neural connection to Earth while appearing defeated required considerable concentration. "Your species' arrogance exceeds your capabilities," hissed Commander Kraz, his chidness mandibles clicking inches from Marcus's face. "Did you truly believe we wouldn't discover your research into gravimetric manipulation?" Marcus allowed himself a small, defeated smile. "It was purely theoretical. We're decades away from practical applications." The Silurian struck him again. the blow calculated to cause pain without permanent damage. They still needed him functional to access the encrypted data cores they'd seized. "Your lies insult me," Kraz snarled. "We've analyzed the equipment in your laboratory. Primitive, yes, but clearly aimed at developing weapons technology prohibited for emerging species." In Marcus's peripheral vision, the nanite interface in his contact lens displayed a progress bar. 73% of Xylorian ship systems successfully infiltrated. The data cores the aliens had seized contained the most sophisticated virus humanity had ever developed, designed specifically to appear vulnerable while actually being the perfect delivery system. "Please," Marcus whispered, injecting the right amount of desperation into his voice. "The research was unsanctioned. The Conclave doesn't know. If you release me and my team, we can provide you with everything we've learned." Kraz's compound eyes gleamed with triumph. "You'll provide us with everything regardless, human." The alien turned to his subordinate. "Prepare the primary interrogation suite. Use the neural extractors." In the observation room connected to General Singh's command center deep beneath the Mariana Trench, Dr. Eliza Chen watched the interrogation with clinical detachment. "He's doing well," she noted, monitoring Marcus's vital signs. Stress levels elevated but within acceptable parameters. General Singh nodded, her attention focused on the data streaming in from Marcus's nanite network. "The Xylorians are accessing exactly what we want them to access. Their cybersecurity is even more primitive than we anticipated." "What about their neural extractors?" asked Admiral Tokarev, who was observing remotely from Luna Command. Dr. Chen smiled thinly. "Harmless to us. Our neural shielding is generations beyond their capability to detect, let alone breach. What they'll extract is exactly what we've prepared for them to find. Convincing memories of struggling research and failed experiments." Singh's terminal pinged with an alert. "Phase 2 is complete. We now have backdoor access to the entire Xylorian military network." On her command screen, she could see the real-time mapping of every Xylorian outpost, weapons cache, and military installation throughout their territory. Information that would have taken decades to gather through conventional espionage. "Should we extract him now?" Admiral Tokarev asked. Singh considered this briefly. "No, that would raise suspicions. Let them think they've broken him." Marcus knew this mission could last weeks. Back in the interrogation chamber, Marcus was being dragged toward the neural extraction room. The Xylorians believed they were on the verge of a significant intelligence coup. In reality, they were unwitting participants in humanity's most elaborate intelligence-gathering operation to date. "Your resistance is admirable but futile," Commander Kraz said as the extraction apparatus was prepared. "Soon, all of humanity's secrets will be ours." Marcus allowed himself to appear terrified while silently completing the final phase of the cybernetic infiltration. As the Tylorian neural probes approached his temples, the nanite display in his eye flashed a single message: 100% infiltration complete. Phase 3 initiated. The game was proceeding exactly according to plan. Dr. Sanjay Patel hunched over his microscope in the hastily established laboratory on Rigel Prime, surrounded by dead and dying aliens. His team worked with deliberate inefficiency, dropping equipment and expressing frustration at regular intervals for the benefit of the Conclave observers. "I don't understand," Sanjay muttered loudly enough to be overheard. "The viral mutation rate is unlike anything we've encountered." He ran his hand through his disheveled hair, a calculated gesture of desperation. Behind him, the Mavorian medical observer clicked his mandibles with undisguised satisfaction. The insectoid creature had argued against involving humans in the crisis at all. "Perhaps your species is not equipped for challenges of this magnitude," he suggested, his translator barely concealing the condescension in his tone. Sanjay straightened his back, allowing just enough wounded pride to show. "We won't give up. These people deserve our best effort." As the Mavorian turned away, Dr. Lydia Okafor approached Sanjay with a datapad. "For your eyes only, she whispered, making sure the alien observers saw their serious expressions. The datapad contained nothing important. Their real communication happened through subdermal implants that transmitted directly to their auditory and visual cortices. The latest data confirmed what they already knew. The modified retroviruses they had released were systematically neutralizing the plague exactly as designed. Recovery would begin within hours. The Antarctic Directorate has analyzed the newest blood samples. Lydia's voice echoed in Sanjay's mind. This plague was engineered. The protein markers indicate Theran biotechnology. Sanjay maintained his outward appearance of concern while processing this information. The Therans, a militaristic species from the Galactic core, had apparently unleashed this weapon deliberately. The question was, why? Tell Director Reyes, he subvocalized, the implant in his larynx transmitting his response. This changes the strategic picture. The Therans might be testing biological weapons before attempting something against Earth. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the quarantine ward. A Futurian child, crystalline skin dulled by disease, had begun to recover, blue luminescence returning to her translucent form. Around her, other patients showed similar signs of improvement. The Conclave medical team rushed to verify the unexpected recovery. Sanjay allowed himself appropriate surprise and tentative hope. It's working, he exclaimed with well-practiced amazement. The modified retroviral therapy is working. The Mavorian observer pushed past him to examine the patients himself. Impossible, he chittered. Your treatment protocols were rudimentary at best. Sanjay straightened his rumpled coat. Sometimes luck favors the persistent, he offered with humble gratitude. We must have stumbled upon the right combination of antivirals and genetic stabilizers. Within hours, news of the miraculous human breakthrough spread throughout the quarantine zone. The Conclave Medical Authority, which had expected to document human failure, now scrambled to explain the success. In his private quarters that night, Sanjay received encrypted communication from Earth. Plague containment successful, came Director Chen's message directly to his visual cortex. Darren's under surveillance. Your team's apparent discovery has been documented in Conclave archives, with appropriate limitations and errors to maintain technological consistency. Sanjay smiled as he composed his reply. Understood. Recommend investigation into Theran bioweapons program. This was too specifically tailored to be a natural outbreak. Already underway, Chen responded. Return protocols initiated. Maintain appearance of exhaustion and limited understanding. Remember, we stumbled upon this cure through determination and luck, not superior technology. As Sanjay prepared to rest, his gaze fell upon the grateful Futurians celebrating with their recovered children. The deception sometimes weighed heavily, but moments like these, knowing humanity could save lives while maintaining the strategic advantage of seeming less advanced, made the charade worthwhile. Tomorrow, they would continue pretending to be less than they were. The greatest protection sometimes came from being perpetually underestimated. Catherine Zhao shuffled through the crowded spaceport of Centauri Prime, deliberately yielding passage to various alien species as they pushed past her. The commercial hub teemed with activity. Traders from 100 worlds negotiating, arguing, and striking deals that would shape interstellar commerce for the coming cycle. She made her way to a small, dingy cafe on the station's lower level, exactly the sort of establishment one would expect struggling human merchants to frequent. The holographic menu flickered inconsistently, another calculated detail of her cover. Decision Aftermath Report. She subvocalized, activating her neural implant. Mercantile Guild restrictions now in place. Human shipping lanes reduced by 17%. Tariffs increased by 15%. The cafe's ambient noise provided perfect cover for her communication. To anyone watching, she appeared to be a dejected trader reviewing disappointing figures on her outdated tablet. Confirmation received, came the response directly to her auditory cortex. Tariff increase anticipated. Phase 4 initiated. Proceed to secondary objective. Catherine ordered a synthesized protein drink, noticeably cheaper than the premium beverages other species consumed around her. As she sipped the deliberately unappetizing concoction, her augmented vision identified 3 Valakian traders entering the establishment, their reptilian scales shimmering under the cafe's dim lighting. These were her real targets. While the guild believed she was returning to human space in defeat, her actual mission was just beginning. Catherine Zhao, the lead Valakian, approached her table, tongue flicking out to taste the air. "I heard your meeting with Guild Master Volnax didn't go as hoped." She allowed her shoulders to slump further. The guild has made its position clear. Humans remain at the bottom of the trading hierarchy. The Valakian named Cirrus settled his massive frame across from her, his companions taking positions at nearby tables. "Perhaps we can help each other," he suggested quietly. "My consortium has also suffered under recent guild restrictions." This was exactly as intelligence had predicted. The Valakians, once a dominant trading power, had been systematically marginalized by the guild's 7 controlling species. "What could we possibly offer?" Catherine asked, injecting just the right amount of desperate hope into her voice. Cirrus leaned forward. "You humans may lack advanced technology, but you have something equally valuable: unmonitored shipping routes. The guild considers your cargo too insignificant to track closely." Catherine feigned nervous consideration while her neural implant recorded every microexpression and pheromone release from the reptilian trader. "I'm listening," she said cautiously. What followed was precisely the proposal Earth Central Command had anticipated. A shadow partnership using human ships to transport Valakian goods, bypassing guild tariffs and restrictions. "We would need guarantees," Catherine said, playing her role perfectly. "Humans can't afford to lose what little standing we have if discovered." Cirrus's scales rippled in what passed for amusement among his kind. "The guild already treats you as irrelevant. What more could they take?" "You'd be surprised," she murmured, thinking of the actual quantum phase ships humanity could deploy if necessary. Vessels that could traverse the galaxy in moments by existing partially outside normal spacetime. As they hammered out the details of their arrangement, Catherine's implant continued gathering intelligence on Valakian trade networks and guild enforcement patterns. This desperate partnership would provide humanity with detailed access to sectors of the galactic economy previously obscured. "I believe we have an agreement," Cirrus finally stated, extending his scaled hand. Catherine grasped it with apparent gratitude. "To new beginnings," she said, playing the role of a human trader grasping at any opportunity for survival. Neither the Valakians nor the guild would discover the truth until it was far too late. Humanity was methodically mapping every economic vulnerability in the galactic system, positioning for a commercial takeover that would require not a single shot to be fired. The aftermath of the Hive engagement created precisely the ripples throughout the conclave that Admiral Chen had anticipated. His small fleet of rescue vessels hung in orbit around the Futurian homeworld, deliberately showing battle damage that his engineering teams had spent hours fabricating once the actual conflict ended. "Maintain appearances," Chen ordered as the conclave inspection team docked with his flagship, everyone looking appropriately exhausted and surprised by our survival. Lieutenant Farida Hassan nodded, smudging her uniform with calculated grime before heading to greet the inspectors. The crew had practiced this scenario countless times. The victorious but battered defenders, lucky to be alive after deploying experimental technology that had worked better than expected. Through his neural interface, Chen monitored the Futurians they had rescued. Their crystalline forms still radiated fear and trauma, but beneath that, profound gratitude. Unlike most species in the conclave, the Futurians genuinely valued life over power. It was why humanity had chosen to reveal a fraction of their capabilities to save them. "Admiral, we have a situation," Commander Takeda transmitted directly to Chen's cortical implant. "The Hive Queen is requesting direct communication. Secure channel only." Chen frowned. This was unexpected. The Hive Collective operated with a singular consciousness distributed across millions of individual drones. For the Queen to request direct contact suggested something significant had changed in their assessment of humanity. "Route it to my private quarters," he responded. "Maintain standard protocols with the inspection team." In his sparsely decorated cabin, Chen activated the secure communication array disguised as outdated holographic technology. The translucent image of the Hive Queen materialized, her massive insectoid form radiating both power and something Chen hadn't expected: fear. "You are not what you appear to be," the Queen stated without preamble, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "We have analyzed the energy signature of your weapon. It is not electromagnetic in nature." Chen maintained his practiced expression of neutral professionalism. "I'm not authorized to discuss classified military technology." "Do not insult our intelligence, human," the Queen hissed. "Your species plays a dangerous game of deception. We have encountered technology similar to what you deployed today only once before, 10,000 cycles ago." Chen felt a chill despite himself. The implication was clear. The Hive had encountered another species with time manipulation technology, possibly even humans' distant ancestors, before they mastered interstellar travel. "What do you want?" he asked carefully. The Queen's compound eyes seemed to study him intently. "The Conclave believes you used primitive weapons with unexpected effectiveness. We know better. Tell your leaders that the Hive Collective proposes mutual recognition." "Recognition of what, exactly?" Chen kept his tone measured despite his racing thoughts. "Of our respective positions as superior species," the Queen answered. "The lesser races need not know. We can partition the galaxy between us, avoiding unnecessary conflict." And there it was, exactly the kind of offer that humanity had concealed their advancement to avoid. Power recognized power, and immediately sought alliance or conquest. "I will convey your message," Chen replied neutrally. "Though I suspect you overestimate our capabilities based on a fortunate tactical success." The Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Continue your charade with the Conclave if you must. But know that we are watching now, truly watching. Your kind has revealed itself to those with eyes to see." As the communication ended, Chen immediately transmitted the entire exchange to Earth Defense Command. The Hive's recognition complicated matters significantly. The question now became whether to maintain the deception with them as well, or to acknowledge a truth that could rapidly escalate either toward alliance or conflict. Either way, the careful balance humanity had maintained for generations was beginning to shift. The sanctions against Earth created a wave of diplomatic activity that kept Alina Reyes occupied for weeks. She attended countless hearings, accepted monitoring devices on human vessels, and signed technology limitation agreements with an air of reluctant compliance that satisfied the Conclave's need for dominance. The lunar facility infiltration was a blessing in disguise, Director Quan told her during their secure quantum communication. "The Taveri found exactly what we wanted them to find, and the Conclave's response has been precisely as predicted." Alina sat alone in her modest diplomatic quarters on the Conclave station, the room swept for surveillance devices hourly by nanites disguised as dust motes. "Have we identified the source of the Taveri suspicion? Their infiltration was too targeted to be random." "We believe the Hive Queen has been making discreet inquiries," Quan replied. "After the incident with Admiral Chen's fleet, they've been probing for confirmation of their suspicions. This complicated matters. The Hive operated with a distributed consciousness that made them difficult to deceive once they focused their collective attention on a problem." "What about the Avarians?" Alina asked. "They've been unusually interested in our sanctions hearings." The Avarian ascendancy remained the greatest unknown variable in galactic politics. The avian species rarely engaged directly with the Conclave, preferring to observe from their secretive enclaves. Their technological level was difficult to assess, as they shared almost nothing with other species. "We have reason to believe they know more than they're revealing," Quan admitted. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected Avarian vessels observing our Kuiper Belt installations from beyond standard sensor range." Alina processed this information carefully. So we have at least 2 species potentially seeing through our deception, while the majority of the conclave believes they've successfully contained a moderately advanced upstart species. Precisely, Quan confirmed. Earth defense considers this an acceptable equilibrium for now. The sanction protocols actually provide useful cover for our next phase of operations. The next phase referred to humanity's planned expansion beyond the observable galaxy. With the conclave now focusing intently on human activities within known space, the massive construction projects in intergalactic space could proceed with decreased scrutiny. A gentle chime announced a visitor at Alina's door. The neural feed identified Tarek Nijar, her conclave liaison, and unknown to him, a highly advanced human synthetic designed to be indistinguishable from organic life. One moment, Alina called, switching her neural interface to passive mode. She quickly arranged documents on her desk to suggest she had been reviewing the sanctions. Tarek entered with the efficient movements characteristic of his species. Ambassador Reyes, the Oversight Committee requests your presence at tomorrow's session. They wish to discuss humanity's compliance with the antimatter research restrictions. Alina allowed herself to look appropriately concerned. Of course. Please assure them we are fully committed to transparency moving forward. After the liaison departed, she reactivated her secure communication. The Oversight Committee is increasing scrutiny. We may need to surrender additional technological secrets to maintain the deception. Authorized. Quan responded immediately. The Quantum Entanglement Communication Protocol is prepared as our next revelation if necessary. The version we'll provide contains deliberate limitations and an 83% failure rate under specific conditions. This was how humanity managed their technological revelation, a careful dance of partial truths. Each discovered advancement appeared impressive to the conclave, while containing calculated flaws that presented no actual security risk if duplicated by other species. As Alina prepared for tomorrow's performance of contrition and cooperation, her neural interface displayed a priority alert. The Hive Collective had officially requested a private audience with human representatives, circumventing conclave protocols. Their message contained a single phrase that sent ripples of concern through Earth's leadership. We recognize you as equals. It is time to discuss the future without the pretense of inferiority. The calculated revelation had succeeded too well with at least one species. The question now became whether to maintain the charade or acknowledge a truth that could rewrite the balance of galactic power. The wormhole stabilization changed everything. As Alina stood in the center of the conclave chamber, she could feel the shift in perception from the assembled delegates. Fear, awe, suspicion, and calculation radiated from the various species as they processed the implications of what they had witnessed. The human stabilization technology appears to function by manipulating gravity at the quantum level, the Mavorian scientific advisor was explaining, his insectoid limbs gesturing at holographic representations, something previously considered theoretically impossible. Alina maintained her diplomatic composure while inwardly monitoring the neural feeds from Earth Defense Command. The decision to reveal even this limited aspect of human technology had been contentious, with some arguing for continued complete concealment despite the billions of lives at stake. Ambassador Reyes, the conclave overseer, addressed her directly. This technology clearly violates the sanctions imposed after your previous concealment. What explanation do you offer? Before she could respond, the chamber's massive doors parted to admit a delegation that caused a ripple of surprise throughout the assembly. The Avarian Ascendancy rarely participated directly in conclave proceedings, preferring to observe from their private chambers. The ancient archon of the Avarians glided to the center of the chamber, massive wings folded regally behind his towering form. The avian being fixed Alina with eyes that seemed to contain galaxies within their depths. We have watched the humans since they first reached beyond their atmosphere. The archon's melodious voice resonated through the chamber without technological amplification. They are not what they appear to be. The chamber erupted in confused discussions. Alina felt a momentary panic. This was not how humanity had planned to manage their gradual revelation. The Archon raised a wing for silence. The Ascendancy has observed human activity far beyond conclave space. Their technological development exceeds known parameters. Holographic images materialize around the chamber. Massive structures in distant galaxies. Energy harvesting mechanisms around dying stars. Facilities that clearly bore human-designed signatures, despite being thousands of light years from Earth. Their communications network spans dimensions your species cannot yet perceive, the Archon continued. They achieved post-biological partial evolution 3 centuries ago. Alina's neural implant vibrated with urgent communications from Earth Command. The exposure was happening too quickly, too completely. Centuries of careful obfuscation were unraveling in minutes. The Theran representative rose from his seat, his silicon-based form vibrating with agitation. If this is true, the humans have systematically deceived the Conclave. They represent an unacknowledged threat to galactic stability. Interesting. The Avarian Archon tilted his head. That your first thought is of threat rather than possibility. Alina recognized her moment. The careful script she had maintained for decades no longer applied, but perhaps that was for the best. She stepped forward, allowing her posture to straighten from its habitually deferential stance. The Avarian Archon speaks truth, she acknowledged, her voice carrying new authority that silenced the chamber. Humanity has concealed certain aspects of our development. Outrage erupted from multiple delegations. The Taveri representative actually drew a ceremonial weapon before security fields immobilized him. Before judgment is rendered, Alina continued once order was restored. Consider our actions rather than our capabilities. We have had the power to conquer for generations, yet we have chosen coexistence. We have quietly prevented extinctions, stabilized dying stars, and preserved biospheres without seeking acknowledgement. The Hive Queen's representative vibrated its antennae in what translated as agreement. The humans have demonstrated restraint despite provocation. This suggests an ethical framework compatible with galactic harmony. Not all were convinced. The Theran Collective's delegation withdrew from the chamber entirely, a worrying development given their militaristic tendencies. As debate raged around her, Alina received a priority communication from Admiral Chen. Theran fleet movements detected. All vessels mobilizing from their central systems. Projected destination: Sol system. Time to arrival: approximately 73 hours. The revelation had triggered exactly the scenario humanity had sought to avoid for centuries. A preemptive strike born of fear. As the conclave chamber descended into factional arguments, Alina prepared for the final phase of humanity's emergence, not as conquerors, but as defenders who could no longer hide their true nature. The Silent Watchers had emerged, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Theran attack unfolded exactly as humanity's predictive models had anticipated. Their 5,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect attack formation, weapons primed to deliver destruction on a planetary scale. They expected to face a hastily assembled defense from a species scrambling to deploy their recently revealed technology. Instead, they encountered the full might of humanity unleashed. Admiral Chen stood in the true command center beneath the Pacific Ocean, his consciousness simultaneously present in 1,000 locations throughout the solar system as the neural network synchronized humanity's response. Around Earth, reality itself seemed to ripple as the planetary defense grid activated. Not energy shields as most species understood them, but localized manipulations of spacetime that simply redirected incoming attacks into empty regions of space. Stasis fields deployed, reported Commander Takeda, her physical form in the command center while her consciousness co-piloted 15 autonomous defense platforms. All Theran vessels contained. No casualties on either side. Chen nodded with satisfaction. Despite the Theran's aggression, humanity's response reflected their core philosophy: overwhelming power applied with surgical precision to minimize harm. The Conclave observation vessels are broadcasting everything, Director Quan noted through the neural link. All species are witnessing our true capabilities. On the diplomatic front, Alina Reyes stood before an emergency conclave session, Her demeanor transformed. Gone was the deferential posture and careful humility. She stood tall, her neural enhancements subtly visible now as a faint luminescence beneath her skin. "The Theron attack has been neutralized without loss of life," she announced to the stunned assembly. "Humanity apologizes for the centuries of necessary deception, but not for the restraint we have shown in using our capabilities." Around the chamber, delegates from dozens of species watched in stunned silence as holographic displays showed the immobilized Theron fleet, the most feared armada in known space, held effortlessly in stasis. "We could have conquered," Alina continued, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's collective consciousness. "Instead, we chose to observe, to understand, to protect when necessary without revealing our presence." The Taveri ambassador found his voice first. "How can we trust a species that has systematically deceived the galactic community for generations?" Alina smiled gently. "Judge us by our actions rather than our words. We have had the power to dominate for centuries. Instead, we intervened only to prevent extinction events, stabilize dying stars, and quietly guide developing civilizations away from self-destruction." As proof, she activated a holographic display showing thousands of interventions throughout known space: asteroid diversions, plague containments, atmospheric stabilizations, all performed anonymously by human operatives over centuries. "Your medical technology alone," the Futurian representative spoke, crystalline form shimmering with emotion. "You could have demanded anything in exchange for saving our children from the draconian plague. Instead, you asked for nothing." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Not universal, but growing. The Avarian Archon stepped forward. "The question remains, what do humans intend now that their true nature is revealed?" Alina gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show human installations throughout the galaxy powering down advanced weapon systems. "We offer partnership rather than dominance. Access to medical technology that can extend all species' lifespans threefold. Clean energy systems that require no resource extraction." The Theron representative, who had remained silent until now, rose from his seat. "And if we refuse your partnership, then we continue as before," Alina answered simply. "We have no desire to force our vision upon unwilling species. We ask only that aggression against Earth and human colonies cease." As the conclave debated humanity's offer, Admiral Chen received confirmation that the final phase of Protocol Understated was complete. Throughout the galaxy, human operatives were acknowledging their true capabilities, offering assistance without demand, demonstrating that humanity's power came with corresponding responsibility. Not all species would accept the new reality immediately. Some, like the Therans, would require time to move past fear toward understanding. But the long deception had ended, and humanity could finally step forward as their true selves. In her private thoughts, Alina reflected on the irony that had shaped human strategy for centuries. They had concealed their advancement not from ambition, but from the wisdom that came with power. History had taught them that revealing strength too quickly inevitably led to conflict, while patience allowed understanding to develop naturally. "Remember when humans feigned humility as the galaxy's apex species?" the Avarian Archon asked her privately as the conclave session concluded. Alina smiled. "We never considered ourselves apex, merely fortunate to have learned certain lessons before our power outpaced our wisdom." Throughout the galaxy, a new era began, not one of human dominance, but of partnership guided by the species that had watched over the stars from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to step into the light.